The war had burned for so long that most species no longer remembered how it had begun. The Galactic Concordance recorded 12 centuries of conflict, though the oldest archives hinted that it was longer still, back when the stars themselves were young and proud and full of teeth. The Coalition fought the Dominion. The Dominion fought the Remnant. The Remnant fought the ghosts of their own creation. And through it all, the humans, those latecomers to the galactic stage, fought simply to survive. They had no ancient gods or crystalline empires to draw upon, only ships made of steel, bones that broke easily, and the stubborn, inexplicable conviction that even when the universe hated them, they would not stop breathing. On the fractured moon of Terran 9, under a sky scarred by orbital debris, a single human woman trudged through ash. Her name was Mara Keen, sergeant of the 32nd Terran Expeditionary Corps. Her squad was gone, vaporized when the Dominion fleet had glassed the outpost 2 days ago. The last transmission from command had been a simple, desperate instruction: survive. So she did what humans always did. She found a way. Her suit's power reserves were nearly gone, her oxygen levels dangerously low. The air tasted of metal and dust. The moon had once been lush, covered in forests and blue lakes, but the Dominion had burned it to deny the Remnant their hiding place. Now it was a graveyard. Fields of glass and twisted metal, half-melted cities buried under dunes of black sand. Every step Mara took left a faint print in the soot that the wind erased almost instantly. The war had reached its 15th galactic front. Billions had died. The stars themselves seemed to flicker dimmer with each passing year, as if tired of watching. But Mara wasn't thinking of grand politics. She was thinking of water, warmth, and whether the emergency ration pack in her belt could stretch one more day. When she stumbled across the wreckage, she almost didn't notice it at first. It was just another shattered ship half buried in the dust, until she heard the sound. A faint, high-pitched keening, almost like a cry. She froze, hand on her weapon. The sound came again, weaker this time. She followed it. The wreck had once been part of a Dominion transport, its markings still faintly visible under the scorch. Dominion ships were massive, grown rather than built, their hulls resembling black chitin, their circuits pulsing faintly with bioluminescence. Inside the broken hull, the air was thick with the smell of burnt organic matter. She stepped carefully through the debris, scanning for movement. Then she saw it. A small shape curled beneath a twisted beam, trembling. At first she thought it was some kind of drone. Then it blinked. It was a hatchling, about the size of a large dog, though its body was half that length in folded wings. Its scales were deep violet, shifting faintly with every breath. The creature's eyes were enormous, golden and terrified. Its ribs showed through its skin. A thin trickle of dark fluid, its blood perhaps, seeped from a wound along its flank. Mara froze. Dominion hatchlings were rare, almost mythical. Their species reproduced slowly, and the young were always kept deep within their fortress worlds. This one must have been on a transport fleeing the bombardment when it crashed. She knew what the protocol demanded: terminate the life form. Dominion biology was dangerous, highly adaptable, able to metabolize nearly anything, capable of broadcasting distress signals that could summon entire fleets. But when the hatchling lifted its head and made that small, broken sound again, something in her chest cracked. She knelt slowly, lowering her weapon. "Hey," she whispered through the cracked vocoder of her helmet. "Easy, little one." The hatchling hissed weakly, its frill rising, but there was no strength behind it. Its golden eyes flicked toward the ration pack at her hip, then back to her faceplate. Mara stared at it for a long moment, then sighed. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, unsealing the pack. Inside was half a nutrient bar, 2 cubes of water gel, and a few flakes of dried protein. It was all she had left. She tore off a corner of the bar and held it out. The hatchling hesitated, nostrils flaring. Then, with surprising gentleness, it stretched its neck and took the food from her hand. It chewed slowly, eyes never leaving hers. When it swallowed, it made a soft clicking noise, a sound that might have been thanks or simply relief. Mara felt her throat tighten. "Yeah," she said softly. Don't mention it." She stayed with the creature through the night, wrapped in the remains of a torn Dominion sailcloth to keep the cold at bay. The hatchling crept closer as the temperature dropped, curling its body beside her leg for warmth. Its scales radiated faint heat, enough that she didn't freeze. At some point, exhaustion dragged her into uneasy sleep. When she woke, the sun, if it could be called that, was rising through the haze. The hatchling was awake, watching her. It had eaten the rest of the ration bar while she slept, but it hadn't wandered off. When she sat up, it chirped. A questioning, almost hopeful sound. "Guess we're stuck together," she said. She named it Koa. She didn't know what the name meant, only that it felt right. Over the next 3 days, she scavenged what she could from the wreck and the surrounding debris fields. Dominion tech was strange, half living, half machine, but she found enough energy cells to power her beacon and keep her suit running. Koa followed her everywhere, limping slightly but growing stronger each day. It was a strange companionship, predator and prey, enemy and enemy, bound by hunger and loneliness. She began to talk to it. She told it stories of Earth, of oceans and wind and trees that grew taller than ships. She sang to it sometimes, old Terran lullabies she barely remembered. Koa would listen, tilting its head, eyes wide. Once, when she hummed a tune softly under her breath, the hatchling began to hum too, a low, thrumming vibration that resonated through her bones. It wasn't mimicry. It was harmony. By the 5th day, she had repaired a signal booster and sent out a distress ping. She didn't expect a response. Humans were stretched thin, their fleets shattered. Still, she hoped. That night, the skies above Terran 9 burned again. She saw the Dominion ships first, dark silhouettes sliding across the stars, their engines glowing red. Her beacon must have triggered a trace. She cursed, scrambling for cover. Koa hissed, frills spreading wide. "No, no," she whispered, trying to calm it. "We can't fight them. We hide." But the hatchling's body went rigid. Its eyes glowed faintly. The ground trembled. In the distance, the Dominion ship slowed, as if hearing something. Mara stared. "Koa?" The hatchling turned to her. In that moment, she realized what it was doing. It was calling. Not in fear, but in power. "No," she shouted, grabbing it. "They'll find you." Koa blinked, confused. Its frill flickered uncertainly. For the first time, she saw a flicker of true intelligence in those gold eyes. A question, as if asking her what it should do. Mara hesitated. She could let it call. The Dominion would come, and they would kill her, yes, but they might save the hatchling. It was one of their own. It would live. But she remembered what she had seen. The endless fields of corpses, the shattered cities, the children who would never grow. If the Dominion found the hatchling here with a human, they'd kill it too, for the crime of surviving the wrong way. She took a deep breath. "We run." They fled into the wasteland. The Dominion ships descended, scanning the wrecks, their lights sweeping over the plains. Mara and Koa crept through the canyons, their tracks erased by wind. Her oxygen levels were critically low now. She gave the last of her water to Koa, who tried to refuse, nudging it back toward her with its snout. She smiled weakly. "You're learning," she whispered. For 2 days they evaded the search patrols. Koa grew quieter, sensing her exhaustion. On the 3rd day, she collapsed. Her vision dimmed, her breath rasping in her throat. Koa chirped frantically, pushing at her shoulder. She tried to lift a hand, to tell it to go, to survive. But her fingers wouldn't move. The last thing she remembered before darkness took her was the hatchling pressing its warm head against her chest, humming softly. When she woke, everything was light. She blinked, disoriented. The air was breathable. The sky above was no longer ash but pale blue. Around her stood figures, tall, slender, and radiant, their skin patterned with faint lines of light. Dominion warriors. She reached for her weapon instinctively, but it was gone. One of them raised a hand. "Peace, human," said a voice, surprisingly gentle. "You saved our air." Her gaze snapped to the figure beside her, larger now, scales gleaming, eyes bright as suns. Koa. No longer a hatchling, but still unmistakably the same creature. It chirped softly and leaned close, nuzzling her shoulder. Mara stared. How? The Dominion leader inclined its head. You gave it food. You shared warmth. It remembers. She struggled to sit up, still weak. So what now? You kill me. The leader's eyes softened. No, the hatchling has spoken. It sang your name, human. And in doing so, it changed everything. She frowned. I don't understand. You will, said the leader. For the first time in an age, a Dominion child has sung in harmony with another race. The war cannot survive that sound. Mara stared, breath caught between disbelief and awe. Koa chirped again, pressing close. She felt the vibration through her chest. Low, warm, alive. And for the first time since she could remember, she felt the faint, impossible echo of hope. Mara Keen didn't believe in miracles. She had seen too much war for that. But as she stood on the newly terraformed surface of Terran 9, breathing clean air for the first time in months, she couldn't call what she saw anything else. The Dominion had remade the landscape overnight. Their ships, once engines of devastation, now moved like vast living sculptures above the sky, pouring threads of blue light into the ground. Grass grew where ash had lain. Rivers of silver water cut through the plains. The world that had been burned into nothing now lived again. And the reason was standing beside her, humming softly, his eyes bright with the glow of young. Power Koa, the hatchling she had fed and protected, had become something the Dominion called an Ardani, prime. The term meant child of resonance, a rare individual capable of bonding directly with the song fields that powered Dominion bioengineering. Only a handful had ever existed, each revered almost as a god. Yet Koa was different. His resonance, the elders said, was mixed with something unseen, something alien, something human. Mara was still trying to process that when the Dominion leader approached her. His name was Lord Salen, though he preferred that she call him simply Sa. His features were sharp, but not cruel, his eyes luminous with the same golden hue as Koa's. When he spoke, his voice was deep and oddly musical, resonating in her chest. The hatchling's connection to you is unique, he said as they walked through the reborn valley. We did not think such harmony possible between our kind and yours. The resonance between you two is strong. It ripples through our network. It is felt. I don't understand half of what that means, Mara admitted. All I did was feed him. Sa tilted his head, a gesture that looked like both curiosity and reverence. And in doing so, you bridged the unbridgeable. Dominion hatchlings are born into hunger. It is how they learn the universe's will. To be fed without conquest, to be given life without taking it, this was unimaginable. Sounds like you guys could use a crash course in kindness, she muttered. Sa didn't react immediately. Then he said softly, Perhaps we could, but you must understand, Sergeant Keen. Our war began long before your species ever took to the stars. It is not easily undone. He led her into a vast chamber built within a living tree that stretched kilometers high, its walls translucent, its heart pulsing with light. There, surrounded by Dominion elders, Koa sat in the center of a circular dais, wings half spread, scales shimmering in patterns of blue and gold. He turned as she entered, eyes brightening. Mara, he said. The sound was rough, broken, but it was unmistakably her name. She froze. You can talk? He blinked slowly. Learning, Sa smiled faintly. He learns quickly. His mind is expanding. He retains your language, your tone, your emotional frequencies. And he sings in both. The elders stirred, their murmurs filling the chamber like wind through reeds. Mara had no idea what they were saying, but she could feel their unease. One of them, taller than the rest and wearing a cloak of living filaments, turned toward her. Human, the elder said in a voice like stone breaking. Your species fights us still. Our worlds burn even now. Do you expect us to end the war because you fed a beast? Mara felt the old fire rise in her chest. I don't expect anything, she said. But maybe you should ask yourself why the fighting never ends. You burn, we burn, and nothing changes. Maybe it's time something did. The elder's eyes flashed with contempt. We do not take lessons from prey. Before Mara could reply, Koa moved. The young dragon rose to his full height, tail lashing the floor, and let out a low growl that made the air vibrate. The elder stumbled back, eyes wide. "Not prey," Koa said slowly, his voice deepening, steadying. "Friend?" The word hung in the air like a blade. The elders recoiled, whispering among themselves. To them, friend was a concept reserved only for their kind. For a dominion to call another species that was heresy. But Koa's tone carried a weight that silenced even their outrage. Sa placed a hand on his chest, bowing slightly. "The song changes," he said quietly. "We must listen." That night Mara sat with Koa beside the river that ran through the valley. The stars above shimmered faintly, their light caught in the mist. The dragon lay curled beside her, his scales warm against her arm. "You really shouldn't have done that," she said softly. "They're not ready to hear it." Koa tilted his head. "Truth waits for none." She laughed. "You sound like one of those old philosophers." He blinked. "You taught me." "I didn't teach you anything," she said. "You just watched." "Watched," Koa agreed. Then his gaze drifted upward. "Many eyes watch now," she frowned. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer, but she noticed the faint glow spreading across his wings, patterns of light that mirrored constellations. The Dominion called it resonance mirroring, a sign that his energy was connecting across interstellar distances. She didn't understand the science, but she knew what it meant. The galaxy was listening. 2 days later, she found out how much. The human fleet arrived first. Battle-scarred, weary, armed for annihilation. The Dominion had sent a message of ceasefire, but no one trusted it. The Terran High Command ordered reconnaissance, followed by overwhelming retaliation if any threat was detected. Mara's distress beacon had been the trail they followed. When they saw Dominion ships above Terran Nanain, their first instinct was to fire. But before the first missile could launch, the Dominion sang. Mara heard it before anyone else did. A low, resonant hum that seemed to rise from the planet itself. It filled the air, the water, even her heartbeat. It wasn't words. It was feeling. She stumbled outside as the sky began to shimmer. Koa stood on a ridge, wings spread wide, singing into the heavens. The Dominion ships joined in, their hulls pulsing with color. Above the clouds, human sensors screamed with data overload. Communications officers ripped off their headsets, reporting impossible readings. Ships' engines began to vibrate in harmony with an unknown frequency. The commander of the human flagship, Admiral Hayes, had fought in 37 engagements. He'd never seen anything like it. "What in God's name is that?" his second-in-command asked. "Not a weapon," Hayes said softly, staring at the sensors. "A call." Down below, Mara's comlink burst alive with static. "Sergeant Keene, respond." "What the hell is going on down there?" She took a deep breath. "Stand down, Admiral. Don't fire. It's not an attack. Then what is it?" She looked up at Koa, who had turned his gaze skyward, light radiating from his chest. "It's a song." A long silence followed. Then Hayes's voice came through, low, disbelieving. "A song?" "Yes," she said. "And if you fire, you'll kill the only chance we've got to end this." On the Dominion channels, similar arguments broke out. Generals and fleet lords demanded to silence the human fleet before it could retaliate. But the resonance grew stronger, and through it all, Koa's voice carried a weight no one could ignore. He sang of hunger and fear, of loneliness, of the moment a small creature on a dying world was given food by a stranger who asked nothing in return. He sang of the fire that had burned for centuries and of what it cost to keep it burning. And he sang of the choice every being faced, to consume or to nurture. The song traveled. It wasn't sound anymore, it was energy, radiating through subspace, carried on frequencies that bypassed every barrier. Across the galaxy, combatants on 1,000 fronts stopped fighting for a heartbeat as the resonance reached them. Weapons fell silent. Machines of war hesitated. Mara felt the world trembling under her feet. Koa turned to her, eyes glowing. "They hear," he whispered. "They?" "All." In orbit, Admiral Hayes stared at his sensors. The resonance had reached his ship's reactors, stabilizing them, neutralizing radiation. Power surged. not destructively but harmoniously, as if the universe itself had decided to sing along. He had no orders for this, no doctrine, no weapon. "Only awe, all ships," he said hoarsely. "Cease fire, we—" "Listen." On the Dominion flagship, Lord Salen gave the same command. Two enemies, thousands of light-years apart, spoke identical words. The signal rippled outward. Across countless systems, battlefields fell quiet. On the ground, Koa's song softened, fading into a hum that pulsed gently in the air. The sky shimmered with faint gold light. When the last note faded, Mara realized she was crying. So was Sa. So perhaps was the galaxy. No one declared peace that day. There were still fleets and politics and suspicion. But the weapons didn't rise again. Not that day. Not the next. Something fundamental had shifted. A shared memory burned into every mind, carried in every frequency. Later, when the first diplomatic envoys arrived, human historians would call it the silence before the dawn. Dominion scholars would name it the first resonance. But for Mara, it would always be something simpler. The moment a starving creature was fed, and the universe learned how to breathe again. That night, as the stars returned to their gentle glow, she sat beside Koa once more. He was quiet now, tired, his wings folded close. She reached up and brushed her hand against his snout. "You did it, kid." Koa blinked slowly. "We did it," she smiled faintly. "Guess we did." He tilted his head. "Hungry?" he said softly. Mara laughed, the sound breaking the long stillness. "Yeah, me too." They shared the last of her rations under a sky that no longer burned. Above them, human and Dominion ships drifted side by side in cautious orbit, their guns silent. And somewhere deep in the void, the echoes of Koa's song still traveled, finding ears that had forgotten how to listen. The days that followed the resonance were unlike anything Mara had imagined. The fleets remained in orbit, silent and watchful, yet no one dared fire. The Dominion, for the first time in centuries, treated humanity not as prey or conquerors, but as participants in something greater than war. And humanity, still stunned by the sheer scope of what had just occurred, hesitated at every command. On the surface of Terran 9, Mara walked through the valleys with Koa, the hatchling who had grown almost overnight into something majestic, yet still tender. His scales gleamed like molten sapphire under the twin suns, and his eyes, bright and wise, seemed to carry the weight of the galaxy itself. "Do you think they'll ever trust us?" she asked him as they crossed a silver stream, the water catching the light like liquid glass. Koa's wings stirred faintly, brushing against her shoulder. "Listen," he said softly, almost as if tasting the word. "But trust takes longer?" Mara nodded. "Yeah, I guess so. Funny, huh? I saved you because you were hungry, and now you're saving everyone." Koa didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked toward the distant horizon where the mountains met the sky. "Hungry? Still," he murmured. "They are hungry too." Mara frowned. "What do you mean?" "The hunger that drove the war," he said. "It is not just food or territory or power. It is something deeper, something inside all of them. They fight to fill the emptiness, and now I have made them feel it. Some will act, some will not." She felt a shiver crawl down her spine. "So the peace isn't permanent?" "No," Koa said. His voice was quiet, but the weight of it pressed against her chest. "It is fragile, like eggshells on stone." Mara had known the truth in his words long before he spoke them. The galaxy was vast, chaotic, and full of ambition. One song, even one as powerful as his, could not undo millennia of conflict. But for now, it had given them a chance, and that was something. The first cracks appeared in the days that followed. A Dominion fleet in the outer system of Chrysil ignored the resonance entirely and attacked a mining colony run by human contractors. Mara received the news through a trembling comlink. She had been walking with Koa along a ridge when the call came through. "What do you mean they attacked?" she said, voice tight. "They ignored the signal," one of the field coordinators said. "We tried to hail them, but..." The fleet commander ordered weapons online. Civilian losses are... Mara's hands clenched. She looked down at Koa, whose scales now shimmered with a muted silver light. "We can't let this happen," she said. Koa's eyes narrowed, and she felt a strange vibration through the ground. Resonance building, like the low hum of a planet awakening. "Not yet," he said. "They do not understand. Force only feeds hunger." "I know," Mara admitted. "But if they don't stop..." He shook his head. "We show them. We do not fight. We teach." Again. That night, Mara found herself beside Koa once more, feeding him the rations she had saved from her own stores. It was quiet, almost meditative. The hatchling, though grown, still needed the simple act of being cared for. It was, she realized, a metaphor for what the galaxy needed: attention, patience, and the courage to act with kindness even when faced with brutality. The Dominion elders called a council. Mara reluctantly was invited. They wanted to understand why a human had been able to resonate with Koa when no one else had managed it. They speculated about biological anomalies, about unique frequencies in human DNA. Mara didn't care about the science. She cared about the principle. She spoke to them plainly. "I didn't do anything special. I just cared. I fed him. That's all." And he responded. He didn't respond because I'm human, or because of some genetic quirk. He responded because someone cared. That's all it takes sometimes. A long silence followed her words. She could feel their skepticism, their centuries of tradition battling the simplicity of truth. But slowly some of them began to nod. Koa's eyes glimmered with approval. The next day, Mara received word from Admiral Hayes. The human fleets were waiting for a signal, any sign that the Dominion had truly changed. Mara thought of Koa, of the song, of the hunger that had driven everything. She knew what she had to do. She led a convoy to the mining colony, Koa soaring above, shimmering in the sunlight. The Dominion attackers had already begun their assault, weapons primed, shields active. Mara stepped forward, hands raised, and Koa landed beside her, towering and magnificent. The Dominion commander hesitated, scanning the human figure and the massive dragon who had stopped the war once before. Koa's resonance pulsed outward, a low thrum that vibrated in every ship's hull. Mara spoke clearly, loudly over the comm channels. "Stop! Do not fire! You are not feeding yourselves with this fight. You are feeding your own emptiness. There is another way." The Dominion commander's hands shook over the controls. The ship's sensors picked up Koa's resonance, and it reacted. Weapons automatically powered down. Shields stabilized. Hull energy realigned. The dragon's song carried an unspoken truth: that hunger could be satisfied without killing. Slowly, the fleet disengaged. Mara's heart raced as she watched the ships drift away, their engines dimming. The humans on the colony, who had huddled in fear, stepped forward, blinking in disbelief. When she landed beside the survivors, Koa lowered his massive head, letting the children touch his scales. "Safe," he said simply. "For now," but the victory felt fragile. Mara knew it wouldn't last forever. Some would never accept the resonance as enough. Some would always hunger for more power, more territory, more control. She looked at Koa, and he understood her thoughts without words. "We must go further," he said softly. "Not just here, not just this one colony, others will need to see, to feel, to choose differently." Mara nodded. "We'll go, together." Over the following weeks, they became a traveling symbol. Mara and Koa visited disputed systems, war-torn planets, and shattered colonies. Everywhere they went, the resonance followed. Mara learned to trust it, to move in step with Koa's moods, his subtle signals. She began to sense the currents of tension, the flickers of hostility, and the dormant desires for peace buried deep in even the most hardened soldiers. Not everyone responded. Mara was forced to witness devastation still. Human fleets that misfired, Dominion warlords who ignored warnings. But where the resonance reached, a subtle shift occurred. Weapons deactivated in moments of doubt. Troops lowered arms when Koa's presence trembled in the air. Children no longer fled in terror, and even the harshest commanders hesitated before taking lives. One evening, Mara stood with Koa on a cliff overlooking a human colony that had been threatened by Dominion raiders. She watched as the people planted crops, rebuilt homes, and celebrated survival. The resonance from Koa shimmered faintly through the settlement, and she felt a profound sense of relief. "They are learning," she said softly. "They always could," Koa replied. "They forgot," Mara shivered. "Yeah, forgot, that's humanity, huh?" He tilted his head. "Your species. Remembers when it matters. Feeds when it matters. Protects when it matters." She laughed, though her voice was tinged with sorrow. "Guess that's why you like humans." He didn't answer directly, but she felt the warmth of his approval. Yet even as they moved through the stars, the warning signs grew. Mara intercepted whispers of Dominion factions refusing the resonance, human admirals questioning the logic of restraint, rogue elements hungry for vengeance. She knew the fragile harmony could shatter at any moment. One night, under the dim glow of 3 moons, Mara confided her fears to Koa. "I'm afraid, kid. Afraid that what we've built could fall apart. Afraid that hunger, your song, won't be enough." Koa's eyes glowed softly in the dark. "It is enough, not for all, but for some, and that can grow." Mara reached out, touching the scales along his snout. "I hope you're right." He leaned into her hand. "Hope is a start." And in that moment, Mara realized that the war wasn't truly over. It had simply entered a new phase. A battle for the hearts and minds of the galaxy. A test of whether kindness could outweigh fear, whether a single act of compassion could ripple far enough to matter. She understood now that feeding Koa had not just ended the war. It had ignited a new fight, one far more difficult and more enduring, and she was ready to fight it. With the last dragon at her side, the galaxy held its breath. For months, Mara and Koa had traveled between worlds, bridging divides with a song no army could match. Yet Mara knew the fragile peace could fracture at any moment. Reports filtered in from the outer rim. A Dominion warlord named Vryn had gathered a fleet determined to ignore the resonance, claiming it was a trick of humans to weaken their enemies. Mara watched the data streams in silence. Koa perched beside her, wings folded but eyes glowing with unspoken concern. "They're hungry," he murmured. "Hungry. Not for food, but for control. They think the song makes us weak," Mara nodded grimly. "Some will never understand until they face it themselves." Vryn's fleet moved like a shadow across systems, cutting off trade routes, raiding supply convoys, and sowing chaos wherever they appeared. Humanity and Dominion forces both hesitated to engage fully, sensing the resonance that still lingered in the minds of soldiers and ship commanders. But Mara knew hesitation could only last so long. The moment they struck, countless lives would be lost before Koa could reach them. "We need a plan," she said. "One that doesn't rely on luck." Koa tilted his head, scales glinting silver in the dim light of the command deck. "Luck is only a seed. Action is the soil." Mara exhaled, realizing he was right. She had relied on hope and resonance for so long that she had almost forgotten the practicalities of strategy. They couldn't just hope the song would reach every ear in time. They had to bring it directly to Vryn, face to face, before the fleet destroyed everything. The journey to intercept Vryn's fleet was perilous. Mara piloted a small craft, Koa riding above, their combined presence a living symbol of what had become possible. As they neared the outer rim, Mara could see the devastation firsthand. Burned planets, shattered moons, starving colonies. The sight tightened her chest. She gritted her teeth. "We're not too late," she whispered to Koa. "We can still stop this." Koa lowered his massive wings, and the air around them vibrated with a low hum. Mara felt the ship's controls subtly pulse in rhythm with him, a living connection she had learned to trust. "Together," she said. Koa's gaze met hers. "Together," he repeated. They arrived at the edge of Vryn's fleet at dusk, the gas giant behind them casting long shadows over the approaching ships. Vryn's flagship was massive, bristling with weapons, and her reputation for ruthlessness preceded her. Mara could see the warlord herself, commanding the bridge with icy precision. She took a deep breath and opened communications, a single channel to Vryn. "This is Mara Keen," she said. voice steady. "I've come to speak. You don't have to destroy more worlds today." There was silence. Then Vryn's voice, sharp and bitter, came through. "The resonance! That human trick? You think I care for songs and morals while fleets burn and empires crumble?" "You don't have to care," Mara said softly. "But you have to see. You have to feel. I'm not here to fight you. Koa isn't here to fight you. We're here to show you a choice." Vryn laughed, harsh and cutting. "Choice? You think I have a choice when survival demands conquest?" Koa's hum deepened, vibrating through space. Mara felt it in her chest, her bones, her very heartbeat. It was more than a song now. It was a presence, a bridge to the minds of every being in the fleet. "Survival," Koa said, voice booming like a living mountain, "does not require killing. It requires giving, sharing, protecting." The fleet trembled. Mara watched the sensors, the guns, the shields, the energy grids, reacting to Koa's resonance. Systems overloaded, then stabilized in perfect harmony. Confused shouts came over the Dominion comms. Mara smiled faintly, feeling the moment she had waited for. The song had reached them. Vryn's face tightened. "You cannot stop what has begun." "You can," Mara said, stepping forward. "You can choose differently. You can end this war here. You don't have to let your hunger define you." Koa extended his wings, filling the viewport with shimmering light. The resonance became almost tangible, touching the minds of every soldier, every commander, every pilot aboard Vryn's fleet. Memories long buried surfaced. Times when they had cared for someone, fed someone, protected someone. The memories collided with the instinct to kill, creating a tension that was almost unbearable. Mara held her ground, feeling the pulse of Koa's energy align with her own heartbeat. Vryn's hand wavered over the controls. She looked at Mara, at the dragon, at the humans and Dominion alike, whose weapons had fallen silent. Mara met her gaze. "Do it," she said. "Feed your hunger another way. Protect rather than destroy." There was a long pause. Then, with a trembling breath, Vryn's finger left the trigger. She stepped back, her eyes wet, not from fear but from a sudden, overwhelming realization of the choice she had before her. Across the fleet, other commanders followed. Weapon systems powered down, shields lowered. Koa's resonance softened, a gentle pulse that reassured rather than dominated. Mara felt tears sting her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Koa corrected softly. "We did it. All of us who chose to." The fleets drifted silently, a fragile truce now in place. Mara's calm crackled with voices. Admiral Hayes, Dominion elders, scattered human and Dominion crews, all confirming the cessation of hostilities. The galaxy was quiet, listening, finally learning what she had always believed. Hunger could be satisfied without destruction, that compassion was not weakness, and that a single act of care could ripple outward, touching hearts across light years. Over the next weeks, Mara and Koa traveled from system to system, mediating disputes and preventing flare-ups before they could grow. The resonance became a tool of diplomacy, a living reminder that the universe could respond to kindness as readily as to violence. Mara learned to interpret its subtle variations, guiding fleets toward compromise and colonies toward reconstruction. She became a legend, a human who had fed a hatchling and, in doing so, fed the galaxy itself. Despite the victories, the work was far from over. Mara often sat with Koa, resting on the cliffs of liberated worlds, contemplating the fragile web they had woven. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. Koa tilted his head, scales catching the sun. "It will last if they remember, if they choose. Choice is stronger than fear, but it must be exercised." Mara nodded. "We'll have to remind them then, constantly." "Yes," Koa said. "And you are a teacher, not by words but by action, by care." They shared a quiet moment, watching children play along rivers that had once been battlefields, seeing humans and Dominion alike rebuild cities side by side. The contrast to the destruction they had witnessed was overwhelming, a testament to what could be achieved when someone dared to feed rather than fight. Months later, the final confirmation of peace came, not with treaties, not with signed declarations, But with the sight of the fleets from both sides arriving together at a devastated colony in the core of the Turalis system, together they repaired infrastructure, distributed food and medical aid, and rebuilt homes destroyed in decades of war. Mara and Koa watched as humans and Dominion worked side by side, children of both species laughing and playing beneath the twin suns. The galaxy had not just paused in its fighting, it had begun to heal. Mara knelt beside Koa, feeling his warmth. "We did it," she said softly, though she knew the truth. "They did it. We just reminded them how." Koa lowered his massive head to nuzzle her, a gesture of comfort and connection. "And you fed me. That started everything." Mara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I guess sometimes a little kindness really can change the universe," he hummed, a sound that resonated deep into her chest, carrying with it a promise. The galaxy had learned, for now, the power of compassion over conquest. Mara knew challenges would come, that hunger and greed would always lurk in dark corners. But she also knew that the seed had been planted, and the echo of that small act, the feeding of a starving hatchling, would carry through generations, across species, across the stars. As they rose into the sky together, human and Dominion fleets following in silent formation, Mara looked out at the glittering expanse of stars. Each one was a reminder of a world saved, a life protected, a future reclaimed. Koa's wings cut through the atmosphere, and the resonance spread outward once more, not as a weapon, but as a song of hope, a beacon of what humanity, with its empathy and courage, could bring to even the darkest reaches of the galaxy. For Mara, for Koa, and for every being who had chosen to listen, the war had ended. Not with fire, not with death, but with the simple, enduring truth that feeding the hungry could feed a universe in ways no weapon ever could. And somewhere, across the endless stars, that song still traveled, waiting for the next heart brave enough to hear it, to act and to choose life over hunger once more.